Hello and welcome. I am Vishal Dahiya and you're watching our special show India Fights Back, where we take a stock of the battle against COVID-19 pandemic. Now, March 24th marks the first anniversary of the lockdown, which saw multiple extensions and eventually ended with a phased unlocking. Since then, we've come a long way, and now the vaccination drive against COVID is also in full swing. However, the battle against this pandemic is not yet over. In its briefing on Wednesday, the Health Ministry has said that the situation in two states is of grave concern, as they have shown a recent surge in the COVID-19 cases. Maharashtra has reported more than 28,000 cases in the last 24 hours, and Punjab is reporting huge number of cases in proportion to its population. India's total active caseload has reached around 3,68,457, and so far 771 cases of coronavirus variants have been detected across 18 states, out of which 736 are of the UK variant, 34 of the South African variant, and 1 of the Brazilian variant as well. Today, we're trying to understand this entire journey, year-long journey against the COVID-19 pandemic, the lessons which we have learned, and at the situation which we are right now with the rising cases, this surge in few states, the reasons behind it, how we are tackling this particular surge, and the fact which we need to understand that this fight is not yet over and we can't lower our guard. And to understand more better the nuances of all these aspects, we have with us a distinguished panel of experts. Let me first introduce them to you, beginning with Dr. S.K. Singh, who has joined us, Director NCDC in the Ministry of Health and member of the National Task Force on COVID-19. Dr. Raman Gangakhedkar also joins us. He's also a member of the National Task Force on COVID-19 and has been closely involved with this entire process throughout this year. Welcome, both of you, gentlemen. And let me begin with you, Dr. Singh. Let's start by taking stock of the situation right now. There were some numbers which I mentioned from the Health Ministry's press conference, and the issue not only in these two states, specifically Maharashtra and Punjab, but also overall in terms of the kind of surge which we are witnessing.
No, I think if we are to review the current situation, I think we are definitely experiencing a rising trend in two states, challenging scenario in maybe more than 6 states. And of that, I think Punjab and Maharashtra you have already mentioned. Kerala still remains to be tackled fully. Then we have Chhattisgarh, then we have Madhya Pradesh and Delhi, all are showing a rising trend. Having said that, I think it is very important to take a stock of the year which has just gone by. And we started with, I think, very low testing facilities, very low knowledge regarding treatment, containment and all. We just followed the laid down public health measures and tried to tackle this pandemic right from the beginning with airport screening, contact tracing, cluster containment, and putting up strict perimeter control and doing testing and all. So we have enhanced in all the areas. But having said that, it has also been a habit that once we are used to this COVID appropriate behavior, we have seen that it has been contained to a substantial level. Then suddenly comes the complacency, and suddenly comes the laxity, both on the part of government, both on the part of public, and also with regard to the COVID appropriate behavior. So I think combined all these things together, what we are seeing is we have seen that the cases come in surges, and we have seen one surge, we have seen 3 surges in Delhi, and now all over the country we are again seeing a rising trend.
Okay, indeed, that is the scenario right now. Let me also bring in Dr. Raman Gangakhedkar here. Dr. Gangakhedkar, you've been closely involved with this, battle against the COVID-19 pandemic since it began. And what we would like to understand from you is what we have learned so far in the year-long journey based on our experiences, the way we have tweaked our response against this particular pandemic. We've learned along the way how the virus behaves. We've developed vaccines as well. But what are the key takeaways during this entire year?
No, some of the key takeaways that I would say is perhaps for the first time at such a large scale, we have used non-pharmacological interventions over other medical interventions successfully. Perhaps it was the first time when a lockdown was used so efficiently to raise the healthcare infrastructure that we could even ensure that the diagnostic capabilities or capabilities to provide care could be enhanced. So essentially, it tells us that we have a very good capacity. If we invest on these capacities, then perhaps we will be able to make a huge difference. We adopted newer modes of teaching people, and that was mainly through either telemedicine or using virtual mode, and still we could ensure that our quality of services remains extremely good. The second issue that it also taught us is health and economy are very closely linked issues, and if there are implications on health, even the economy cannot remain behind when it comes to those issues. Third thing that it has taught to us, that fear-based campaigns can last for a short period of time. When people change out of fear, sustaining the change becomes an difficult and challenging task. If we have to do that, even today, we really do not know how we can mobilize community, involve the community strongly in adopting that particular behavior. The fourth thing that we learned in a pandemic where we did not know anything, one of the best things that we could provide with a good outcome was not by newer drugs, but by enhancing our standards of supportive care that we could provide. And therefore, you are seeing an outcome that we could have lower death rates compared to others. The fifth thing that we have learned, to my mind, is a strong public and private partnership, whether it is in diagnostics, whether it is in provision of care. It plays a very crucial role while handling pandemic of this size, and I think we have to go more over it. And what was important was the industry also responded very strongly to all the measures of public private partnership, including research and development of newer diagnostic tests as well as therapeutics in terms of vaccines that we could come up.
Okay, and those are very significant and important, takeaways which you mentioned, Dr. Gangakhedkar, and we'll take them up in terms of how they can be further amplified. But before we do that, one more question, Dr. Gangakhedkar, is how would you assess the present situation vis-a-vis the surge in cases? Are we ceding ground to COVID-19 again? Obviously, the reasons can be many, and the prominent among them, as Dr. Singh has pointed out, is the laxity in part of implementing the COVID-appropriate behavior. But these rising cases do indicate, or once again do warn us that we have to pull up our socks.
Absolutely. No, what I would say, it is premature to say that this second wave is going to have perhaps worse outcomes, in terms of outcomes. But it would be more of maturity that could people attach to if they change their behavior, take this warning. Now that they are surging in different states, even other states have to understand one thing. A small bit of complacency perhaps could affect the number of cases and even the outcomes in terms of deaths that would occur because of severe COVID in the population. So I would say that this is a warning that this particular virus is giving to us. If people don't change their COVID appropriate behavior, adhere to what the government has been saying, perhaps you will find that this will be a second wave where numbers could be huge. And since numbers are huge, the proportions of deaths remaining constant, the absolute number of deaths will also be higher. Now, we need to avoid that. Adopting COVID appropriate behavior, raising our standards of its adherence is not a very difficult task. We need to make newer attempts to mobilize community if we are to stop this particular increase that we are seeing into a full-fledged second wave.
Okay, okay. That's very, very important out there. Again, we are coming back to the same aspect, that is the COVID appropriate behavior, and obviously that remains the main key, mainstay there. But Dr. Singh, you've been to some of these states where we are witnessing the recent surge in cases, and what we would like to understand is that some of the key learnings along the way throughout that year were mentioned by you. Few of the very important aspects were, pointed out by Dr. Gangakhedkar as well. What exactly went wrong on the ground in these states in terms of not implementing those lessons which we have learned? Or is it something else in terms of the reason or rationale behind this surge in cases?
I like to put it a little differently. Number one, what went wrong may not be the right word, because we have to understand the ground situation. We have a large susceptible pool. Although if we say that the highest seropositivity what we observe in Delhi to the tune of 50%, it still leaves around 70 crore people in our country susceptible to infection. And these susceptible individuals, whenever they will come out with the protected environment and encounter the virus, will get the infection. So that does not change the immunity level of the individuals who are susceptible. So that is one. Vaccine coverage, what we see is to the tune of maybe 4 crore or odd people. Then again, we are left with a large pool of susceptible. That is one side. The second aspect which you said, what went wrong? I think pandemic fatigue, which has set in, and maybe the behavior of our community, they feel in the beginning that, okay, this has happened in China, this has happened in UK, but it will not come to us. Maybe many of the cities where people were really very carefree. They were feeling that, okay, large rallies are happening in Bihar, so nothing happened, and like that. So that sort of like nothing is going to happen to us, that might have had some impact. That was second. Now, what Dr. Gangakhedkar has very rightly emphasized, that during the last 1 year, we have learned many good ways, like transmission dynamics have been understood better, impact of public health non-pharmaceutical interventions have been learned better, administration, health persons, and the community know that what measures really work, like lockdown, like making containment zone full perimeter with full perimeter control, enhanced testing as the cases go up. The administration knows that we have to enhance testing. So all these measures have had an impact. And we know that these are the time-tested strategies, and we have to resort to them. And if we take the rising trend as a challenge and immediately pull up our socks, I think there is no way that we cannot tackle this.
Okay, and since both of you are mentioning the community mobilization vis-a-vis the COVID-19 appropriate behavior, Dr. Singh, I'd like to start with you to try and understand what needs to be done on the ground exactly, to ensure that this doesn't spiral out of control.
You are very right. I have been to Maharashtra, I have been to Punjab, and I have also been to Kumbh. So just to put the things in perspective, we are seeing the areas where high transmission is going on. If we look at Nagpur, there are identified wards which were not exposed to the infection to that great extent in past, are the ones which are giving us most transmission or maximum transmission. That is one. Similar thing what we have seen in Punjab. The cities like Hoshiarpur, Nawashahar, cities like Amritsar, and the areas in that Amritsar again are giving us high transmission. And yes, of course, after seeing all this, we need to understand the genomic variations also in little bit more detail. Because on one hand, we are trying to tackle virus. On the other hand, virus is also trying to evade the control measures which we are putting in place. And that is definitely giving us a different kind of scenario. But yes, what needs to be done, it needs to be done at all levels. I think Home Ministry has come up with a clear directive regarding all various situations and the measures which have to be taken at various levels. These directions have been issued, and press conferences and the direct intervention from the Home Ministry and Health Ministry is being done at all levels. So I think methods are clear. People know the strategy. Only thing is that implementation aspect. We have to see the things are implemented in the right spirit.
Okay, okay. Dr. Gangakhedkar, your views there, sir, on what needs to be done on the ground, learning from our mistakes, learning from our experiences to ensure that, we contain this recent surge.
Yeah, I think it's a very big challenge. As of now, if you think in terms of mobilizing the community, there are multiple things which we may have to change. One of the things which we are learning is, people are witnessing certain scenes which tend to reduce the impact of whatever we try to teach. Now if you see in the surrounding or in other states that people are moving without masks, and you see the numbers are still lower, it passes off a different message. The very fact that decline in infection was treated as if we have won the war. No, we have to change our narrative. No, we can't say that it is a success prematurely. Claiming premature success has its own toll when it comes to handling an outbreak which is more likely to become endemic. What is also important to understand is, so far the community opinion leader model that we were trying to utilize actually tried to involve both the either political leadership or the leaders at local level, but at the same time even doctors we have used as opinion leaders. But there is one thing which we are learning as much as we can. No, one thing is, perhaps we need different opinion leaders. We really do not know how to create newer opinion leaders, because as it is, when I may be even speaking, perhaps the impact that I could have had at the beginning of the outbreak was perhaps is not something which you would observe as of now when we speak, because there is some kind of lack of interest that is coming in terms of the spheres of influence. I think we need to recognize the sphere of influence was wide when it came to lockdown, but now when you are post lockdown, in a post lockdown phase, when you are seeing decline in infection, the sphere of influence continues to become so small that we may have to identify different opinion leaders who could be more useful towards doing it, and that's something which is very important. And at the same time, I must also say, you are seeing a different kind of a pandemic. No, normally we would have had expected that wherever the first wave was stronger, perhaps the second wave should become smaller. No, because you have already infected a large proportion of the population, and only a small proportion tends to get exposed and get infected. But here you are seeing both mixed patterns. Now, which essentially means, if you go to urban areas, even metropolitan places or large cities, there where the infection was severe, you are finding increases occurring. You go to Vidarbha, and in Vidarbha, where population density is low, there you are seeing higher numbers that are emerging. That both have different phenomena. We need to understand as to why this is happening. Only then we will be able to take adequate steps.
Okay, definitely. We need to understand the pattern, the behavior of the virus, and keep on tweaking our strategy out there, as Dr. Gangakhedkar is pointing. One more aspect, I'd like to begin with you, Dr. Singh, since you mentioned it in your earlier response about how the virus is also changing in terms of the mutants or variants we call, and the figures which we have so far out of 770 odd variants, cases, positive cases of variants which have been detected. Majority of them are of the UK variant. So if we can try and understand, how important and significant that aspect is, and is it the UK variant which is more prevalent here, other than, rather than the South African or the Brazilian ones?
So that is very right. That UK variant we have 736 on the. If we look at the South African, they are only 36, and Brazilian variant is only 1. So by number, yes, that is correct. But when we look at the public health implications of these variants, in various cities or in various communities. I think it has not been very clearly established that UK variant is driving the surge. I think we need to understand that very clearly. People say that 81% of the recent Punjab samples which have come are of the UK variant. Yes, that is a fact, but that was from the 401 samples which we sequenced. So that is correct, but that were from the 9 cities which we got the samples. So we have to clearly establish the linkage. And saying this, I think needs to be little statistically evidence-based. Unless and until clear statistically significant evidence is generated and that is quantified in terms of the surge versus variant, and then only I think will be rather more clear that the surge is being driven by UK variant. That was one. Yes, definitely we are looking at other variants also, but that is one part. But that doesn't change the COVID impact of COVID appropriate behavior, which has definitely given us good result. That doesn't change the diagnostics, which are really working in this. That doesn't change the vaccination status, which is right now the only way in which we can get through this particular challenging scenario.
Okay. Dr. Gangakhedkar, your views, sir, concluding comments on this variance portion of the battle against COVID pandemic, how we need to approach this.
No, there is one thing which we have to learn. We are fighting a war with the virus. The virus tends to change itself rapidly with every reproductive cycle. Now, when it keeps changing, you will find there would be number of different mutations that would be observed. However, some of those mutations which occur in critical areas will suddenly become extremely important because that can affect either transmission efficiency or it can affect the severity of the disease. What is most important key that we have to understand that this particular virus has a error prone mechanism during its reproduction. So what it does is I might last in my body for 15 days time, but if I within that 15 days, if I transfer myself into some other body, I will be able to foster more changes in that particular genome. So a variant of significance, variant of high consequence can very easily come up. But what is most important that we need to keep at the back of mind? Therapeutics or vaccine, let scientists handle that part. Even if there is a variant, even if there is a wild type virus, what works the best is COVID appropriate behavior. Let us not forget that part. Let us actually accept that I have to change and not blame the virus for the numbers. I have to change. I can still protect even in the given environment where variants are coming up by enhancing adherence to the COVID appropriate behavior.
Okay, definitely. There it is. The onus lies on all of us. Thank you so much, Dr. Raman Gangakhedkar, as well as Dr. S.K. Singh for sharing your views and insight. This is the gist of the year-long battle against COVID-19 pandemic, which we have fought valiantly. We have done pretty good at that and almost, being very, very successful. But the battle, as our experts were pointing out, is far from over. There is a recent surge in cases, and the reasons, as pointed out by the panelists, are clearly evident there. The only way out specific is to adhere strictly to the COVID-19 appropriate behavior. And this is a simple 3-step process. Let us remind you once again, that is, wear your mask at all times when you are in public places. Also, ensure that you wash your hands regularly. Hand hygiene is very significant. And do not forget to maintain physical distancing of at least 6 feet. These 3 simple steps, which constitute COVID-19 appropriate behavior, will go a long way in protecting you and your near and dear ones and everybody else as well. So that is it in this episode of India Fights Back. We'll come back again with a different aspect of battle against COVID-19 pandemic. Till then, keep watching Sunset Television. Thank you.